Hari Om Swamiji.
Good morning.
Hello everyone, welcome to the continuation of discussion on yoga. This meeting will be recorded and it will be posted on YouTube. So if you have missed any of the previous parts, you can find it on YouTube. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidakena yopakurotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuvei patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartra sutrasya bhashyasya kramad vivaranasya cha. We are still discussing the 15th sutra of Sadhanapada. Parinama tapa samskara dukkhaihi gunavritti visheshacha virodhacha gunavritti virodhacha dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. So, this is the sutra. It splits like parinama, tapa, samskara, dukkhaihi, guna, vritti, virodhat, cha, dukkham, eva, sarvam, vivekinaha. That's the sutra. Now, in this sutra, you find a complete analysis of some of the mental conflicts caused by different emotions and feelings and vrittis. So vritti, we should remember what vritti implies. Vritti is the residual effect of every kind of action. Any kind of action, not just physical action alone, but when we speak, that word that we speak as one visible, tangible effect. Then, after the act of speaking is over, that action leaves behind a residual effect in the mind of the person who has heard the word and also in the mind of the person who has spoken the word. So also every deed, every thought leaves behind in the mental system something like an impression, a tendency, which later become what we call in Sanskrit, samskara, sankalpa, vasana, karma, etc. An impression, an emotion, a tendency, an aptitude, which again could cause repetition of the same activity. So, in this process, you can find, we discussed one important element in the Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga, the first sutra in Sadhanapada, that is, we can see the sutra. Tapa swadhyaya ishvara pranidhananani kriya yoga. Austerity, reading or listening to auspicious sounds, and then resigning to God, all these constitute Kriya Yoga, which in the expanded meaning according to commentators include Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and so on. And the commentators actually mention something very important, and that is important in the context of the 15th Sutra. That is, Ishvara Pranidhana is mentioned there, resigning to God. When we do something, when we, let's say everything is God's, everything is left to God. Let us say what happens. Immediately, a heavy weight is lifted off our shoulders. So what happens is, a lot of these emotions and feelings get sublimated when a sincere devotee resigns everything to God. It depends upon the totality of the sincerity. So very often some commentators give the example, it's taken from Buddhism of course. You know, if you got a glass, let's say, and the glass is half full with milk, and you pour water into it, then what you get when you fill the glass is half the glass is milk, the other half is water. Suppose the glass is empty, or the glass of cup water maybe is empty, then if you pour milk, then it's all 100% milk, there's no water. Like that, when a person completely surrenders himself to God, then what happens is emotions and feelings and ideas, his actions, his thoughts, all vrittis, vasanas, samskaras, all get a spiritual orientation. So that's what is actually happening in what you call spiritual transformations. When devotees, you can see this story with St. Augustine, St. Francis of Assisi, and in all religious traditions you find devotees, some kind of transformation. Not necessarily. Of course, in the classical Christian context, committing a sin and then God taking away your sin and you surrender, you take refuge in Christ and then you get a new change. That is not accepted in Vedanta or yoga. You need not be a sinner to be a good man. You need not undergo transformation to be a good person. So this is an important dividing point. In the classical Christian tradition, you had to commit every kind of sin, and you commit so many sins, you hit the rock bottom, you can't go further down, then God's grace comes and you are lifted off. Especially in the Russian Orthodox Church tradition. So you can find this. This is discussed in a very unlikely work like Brothers of Karamazov. So Vedanta doesn't accept that, Yoga doesn't accept that, Buddhism doesn't accept that. We should remember this. There are great men, very great men who are born with great samskaras. Shankaracharya became a famous monk at the age of 7, maybe 6. Unbelievable, but it's a fact, historical fact. And Christ himself had a very short lifespan. It's another example. He was born with a great bundle of samskaras, vasanas and vrittis. So also, you find many great men, great women, Sri Ramakrishna was many. In all traditions you find people who are born with these great samskaras. How do you explain? So, they may have, according to Vedanta, in the previous life, they may have led a completely God-oriented spiritual life completely. So that is an important point, remember. Now, we have to discuss this because this is an important subject. What is parinama dukkha, what is tapa dukkha, and what is samskara dukkha? These are three important topics to be discussed before completing the 15th sutra. First, let us say what sukha means. Dukkha means, the literal meaning, and what it means in yoga is different, slightly different. In yoga, dukkha could mean the feeling that you get when you realize the limitation of something. That is not necessarily dukkha as it means the dictionary. That's an important point, remember. In yoga, in the Patanjali system, a word has got a fixed, well-structured meaning. Slightly different from what that word could mean in the Morley-Williams dictionary or Apte's dictionary or in English, any Sanskrit dictionary. So dukkha means the feeling that you get when you realize the limitation of something. The classical example we gave, Buddha. Buddha was born a prince, lived in luxurious surroundings. One day he realized the limitation of human life when he encountered the reality of death, old age and sickness. immediately he felt, well, there is something beyond this physical body, which one day could get old, can fall sick, and one day disappear, death, all this happens. So after this conviction of the limitation of what normally people consider the most wonderful thing in this world, Buddha left this palace, and that's given as a classical example of parinama dukkha. So it is not grief or sorrow. Buddha was not weeping actually. He was not crying. So when you experience this parinama dukkha, you are feeling, you are experiencing some kind of an incompleteness, inadequacy with what is going on around us right now. And then you think deeper, you think of the deeper realities of life, and that thought transforms your life. Perhaps it gives you a quantum jump in your spiritual evolution. That's what happened to Buddha. It's an example of parinama dukkha, because that feeling of incompleteness is transformative. Parinama means transformation, change. And from an ordinary prince, Buddha became a great world teacher. So to understand that, let us see what sukha means. Sukha means the opposite of dukkha, means enjoyment, pleasure, happiness, etc. So Vyasa in his bhashya, in his commentary, which is the fundamental, the foundational exposition of Yoga Sutra, and the first one chronologically. What it means is, Vyasa says, sukha is something that actually, it satisfies our present thirst or desire. And when that desire is available, we feel a kind of satisfaction. That is happiness or sukha according to Vyasa. Now, one important point is this sukha, this enjoyment cannot come to an end. It's just like by having more and more enjoyment, you cannot exhaust, because the senses and mind always go in search of newer and newer kinds of happiness and enjoyment. In fact, there is the commentators quote one important verse from Mahabharata: "Na jadu kama kamanam upabhogena shamyati havisha krishnavatmeva bhuya eva abhivardhati." Is a well-known verse. What it means is, the sense pleasure that you get in this world, any kind of pleasure, it cannot be exhausted by having more and more. This desire cannot be quenched by satisfying desire. It only gets inflamed like fire, into which you pour oil or butter or anything you pour into blazing fire. The fire becomes more inflamed. Like that, the human mind goes on, keeps seeking new and new and unknown fields of enjoyment. That journey, that thirst, that desire never comes to an end. That kind of mental attitude is what is meant by desire, and its cause, the desire for happiness. So happiness and desire is something that really cannot be exhausted. It goes on moving forward, and it drags our mind into various directions. So once we understand this, you understand what is dukkha. What is dukkha? Dukkha really, parinama dukkha, what it means is, well, it's all enough. Well, I have getting all this, but there is an end to all this. so I don't need this. Even when it is available, the ability to say, no, I don't need it. That is parinama dukkha. So that is why parinama dukkhada nama pratikula sukhavasthayam abhi yoginam eva klishnadi. Vyasa says, this transformative feeling of incompleteness or worldly desires, it happens to people, to those spiritual seekers who are higher, who are evolved. The ability to say, well, everything is available. It's enough. If somebody has got all this and he says, well, I don't need all this, that person is about to progress and is evolving, is progressing in spiritual life. If a person says, well, I don't need these things because I don't get these things, that will not take us to higher goal. If it is available, still I don't want it. That is parinama dukkha. So that is one important point to remember. Now there is the next one, tapa dukkha. Tapa dukkha is something. So there are some commentators like Bhava Ganesha, Nagoji Bhatta, etc. According to them, enjoyment of pleasure creates raga, and obstruction to this enjoyment of pleasure creates dvesha, raga and dvesha, kind of bitterness, anger. That is dvesha, and enjoyment and infatuation, extreme liking for enjoyment, that creates raga, its opposite. When there is an obstruction that obstructs us from seeking this object of enjoyment, that creates dvesha. Now, what happens is, raga and dvesha make people work along the path of adharma, which leads to papa karmasya. So that's why, extreme infatuation for certain things and extreme dislike, aversion, bitterness, anger, when there is an obstacle in front of our path, then it leads to certain undesirable actions, and these undesirable actions will create a deposit of unhealthy samskaras, vasanas, and it is called papa karmashaya. And it is said that these extreme likes and dislikes, extreme hatred and extreme infatuation and consequent actions will create a storehouse of kleshas, samskaras, and they go on chasing our life. So they may not manifest in this life, but they will certainly manifest in another life. This is not transformative. There is nothing very great about this. That's an important point. Tapa dukkha is very ordinary. To have parinama dukkha, you should be an evolved person. You should be an evolved. That's why yoginameva krishnadi. Parinama dukkha, the feeling of incompleteness, even when everything is available to you, you have a good job, lot of money, lot of wealth, reputation, friends, still you feel, well, what will happen to all of this? One day all this will disappear. That's the beginning of real wisdom. That is parinama dukkha. On the other hand, the ordinary feelings and emotions connected to our infatuation for certain things and our anger when what we like is not available, what we want to enjoy is not available, that is dvesha. It happens to any common persons, and this leads to all kinds of activities. And activities for enjoying these things that we want but we are not able to get, those activities can deposit a lot of unhealthy samskaras in the mental system, and that storehouse of unhealthy samskaras is called papa karmasya. Similarly, there are certain people you find Of course, certain some people, apparently they are not very good people. Apparently. But really they are good people, they get a lot of wonderful things. But in their appearance and behavior, they don't seem to be very good people. But they accomplish a lot. So yoga psychology will tell you, if you believe in yoga psychology, it's a very rational analysis. Yoga psychology, very rational analysis. It tries to explain certain imponderables that we normally come across in our everyday life. When we look for an explanation, we are not going to get an explanation logically. So yoga psychology will tell you that person must have done something very good in his previous life. Acts of great self-sacrifice, acts of some great adventure, just for doing good to others. So that will create a huge storehouse of punya karmasya. Punya means merits. The opposite of bhava is punya. If you do something wonderful, you may do a lot of actions of self-sacrifice to help a good person for a good cause. So that will automatically generate some punya. Punya means spiritual merits. The results of good actions are punyas. So it's called P-U-N-Y-A, that's how they spell in English, punya. So that creates a huge storehouse of auspicious spiritual merits. As a result of this person is having a good time in this life. This is how yoga psychology will explain. If you read Jataka tales of Buddha, you find Buddha was born as a very wonderful wise elephant, sometimes as a wise monkey. He was born into every conceivable kinds of animal kingdom. Human beings, emperors, kings, normal people. He had so many births, 543 previous life cycles. In each of these life cycles, Buddha did something auspicious. Some good auspicious action to help somebody. Helping a poor man, helping a man in danger, saving a man who was facing a big danger. So these actions created lot of punya. So very punya karmasya. As a result, he was born as a prince with these great samskaras. And so when he was 28 years old, when he was going around in the city, when he saw a dead body being taken to the cremation ground, a sick man, an old man, and of course he also saw the face of a sage, then suddenly it struck him, well, what's the meaning of all this? That came as a result of punya karmas. The same thing can be said about Ramana Maharshi. The death of his father had a transformative effect on him. Normally, when somebody's father dies, he may go to crematorium, and for a few days they'll have great grief. But within 10 or 15 days, we'll be back to our normal life. But in Ramana Maharshi's life, it didn't happen. The stark reality of somebody who was living, who was alive till the other day, and he suddenly disappeared with his own father, that had a transformative effect on him. That's because he was a spiritually evolved person, so it had a transformative effect on him. So these are the examples. That is tapa dukkha we have described. So that's why it is said tapa dukkha is unavoidable for everyone. Normal persons will have tapa dukkha. Some desire some objects for enjoyment, working for it. That is raga, and then if you don't get it, then you will have dvesha. This is common. But parinama dukkha can be experienced only by a yogi. That is an important point, remember. So if a person can have parinama dukkha, he is actually the threshold of higher evolution. That's what it means. Then we have samskara dukkha. That is the third kind of dukkha. So, if tapa dukkha is caused by karmasya, tapa dukkha, we mentioned, tapa dukkha can be divided into punya karmasya and papa karmasya. Means punya and papa, raga and dvesha. Extreme like, extreme dislike. And which forms us to do different things. And it is caused by some karmasya. Samskara dukkha is caused by vasana. It is relatively superficial. Vasanas means some kind of impressions left behind by previous experiences of sukha or a thirst for enjoyment. Let us say, sometimes the word vasana is used in normal Indian vernacular in this context. A child is born in a family of musicians will have a vasana for music. So what does it mean that? The vasana is inherited. Or the child may have watched a lot of music programs when he was growing up. So that creates impressions. So these impressions will create a storehouse of karmasya, which can cause the formation of samskara dukkha. Then, so parinama, tapa, samskara dukkaihi. Next important expression in the sutra is guna vritti virodhacha. Guna means sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna, etc. That is, if you have got, how to explain this sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna? I can explain me only with the help of some illustrations. Well, suppose a person is relatively lazy, inactive, given to an easy way of life, relaxation, doesn't have any ambition, because he is very lazy, he is not willing to do anything. That is an example of tamo guna. So nidra alasya pramadoktam. So these are all different terms employed to explain our characteristics. So if I can explain the characteristics, we will understand the implication. So if a person is no ambition, no sense of purpose in life, not very active, not interested in study, dull intellectually, dull physically, lazy, without any purpose, slow, it's an example of tamoguna. And what about rajoguna? It's something higher than tamoguna. Suppose you read in newspapers, there is a chance to get a wonderful job, but you have to struggle hard. You are ready for it. It's a bit adventurous. You are ready for taking up this adventurous way of life. You are ready to be active. You are ready to take risk. And you are flamboyant, enthusiastic, full of ambitions. It's an example of rajoguna. What is sattva-guna? Sattva-guna, it is something very, very abstract. You know a lot about many things. Or you are a very rich person, but you don't make a show of it. But if necessary, you are ready to use it. You have a lot of resources. You don't make a show. If you make a show, you become rajoguni. But you don't make a show. You know how to use it. You are measured, balanced. That is sattva-guna, it is called. So sattva-guna is related to maturity, wisdom, kind of sense of balance. All these are characteristics of a person with sattva-guna. Rajoguni is active, ambitious. He is given to make a show of whatever he has got. That is rajoguna. Sattva-guna, a person with sattva-guna will not make a show. Man with rajoguna will show more than what he has got. Tamoguni is not interested. If you give him something, he is ready to accept it, but he is not ready to work for it. He is not, apparently he may look like a sattva, a person who is less sattva guna, but he actually has no sattva guna because he is too dull, he is too lazy, too inactive to accomplish anything. These are three gunas. Now what Yoga Sutra tells us is, under the influence of these three gunas, the mind is constantly changing. And so apart from these three types of dukkha mentioned above, that is parinama dukkha, tapa dukkha and samskara dukkha, what happens, ambitions, feelings, desires, different moods keep coming and going in the mental system. So sometimes a person may be in a very peaceful state of mind. Sometimes he may be totally restless or maybe dull. As a result, what happens, there is gunavritti virodha, mutual conflict among these gunas. It's called a kind of change of mood, mood swings we may call it. So this is what is meant by gunavritti virodha, means conflict related to in the interplay of sattva guna, rajo guna and tamo guna. In other words, in short, I can sum up this sutra. Parinama dukkha is that higher level of maturity that prompts you to understand the limitation of everything that you have got. Still, you feel a kind of inner incompleteness. It happens only to a yogi, only to a highly evolved person. So I gave the example of Buddha and Ramana Maharshi. A tragic incident in their life had a transformative effect on them, and that made them great. That took them to a higher level of spiritual enlightenment. Tapa dukkha is common to everyone. That is raga and dvesha is common to everyone. And samskara dukkha, it is also common to everyone. It actually related to previous experiences, samskara dukkha. That's an important point, remember, Now we will go to the next very important sutra. From 16th sutra onwards, we are discussing an entirely different topic that we will find out now. That sutra is simple, that is 16th sutra. Yeah, the sutra is Heyam Dukkham Anagatam. That's the sutra. So, and some of these sutras are interrelated. They should be taken together, but we'll understand. So, Heyam Dukkham Anagatam. So, what is Heya? Heya means something to be destroyed, to be got rid of, to be renounced, to be got rid of. That's the meaning Heyam. So what is to be got rid of is the suffering which is yet to come. So the important point is the suffering which is yet to come is to be eradicated. So we should remember that yoga is about eradicating sufferings which are yet to come. So the chain of suffering which has already begun should be worked out through our own experiences. So that is an important point, because yoga disciplines, yoga techniques, Ashtanga yoga, all these are meant to help us to avoid problems which have not yet arrived, so that we will be able to live with wisdom and emotional maturity. What about the problems that we are already facing? According to yoga, these problems have to be faced, and when they should be worked out by experiencing them. This is about yoga in general, but Kriya Yoga contains certain methods which can help us to get rid of the problems that we are still facing, which Ashtanga Yoga doesn't deal with. So, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, leading to Asamprakyanta Samadhi and Samprakyanta Samadhi, all these the eightfold disciplines. Technically, according to yoga, these disciplines will help us to avoid creating new vrittis, new samskaras, and at the same time, of course, through the practice, we will be able to transcend the existing vrittis. But we can avoid creating new vrittis, new samskaras, which are detrimental to our spiritual life. They do not directly tell us how to face the problems that we are already facing. But Kriya Yoga, especially Tapas, Swadhyaya and Iswar Pranidhana, these three disciplines, by austerity, we can reduce the intensity of what we are suffering, some kind of unpleasantness that we are suffering. The intensity, the quantity can be reduced. For example, if a person resigns to God, that is what Vedanta says, and this part of Vedanta is accepted by all commentators. But Patanjali's Sutras do not mention that. Please remember, Patanjali's Sutras themselves are not self-explanatory. Patanjali's Sutras and their implications become clear only when we read Vyasa, Vijnana Bhikshu, Vajaspati and others, and Shankaracharya, good Vivarana. But the commentators explain the implications of sutras with the help of books on important works on devotional philosophy like Bhakti, Bhagavata, Bhagavad Gita. All these are extensively quoted by Vijnana Bhikshu and others. So, and according to them, Iswar Pranidhana, for example, resigning to God, practice of spiritual disciplines, will reduce the intensity of what we are experiencing. If we are experiencing something unpleasant. Great teachers will tell you, suppose a person is destined to be bitten by a snake. He will not be bitten by a snake if he takes up some noble task, if he does something good for others, if he undergoes a lot of spiritual disciplines. What happens, still he will be bitten by something. It may be an ant or an insect. That's what happens. So, the experience will not be totally eradicated, but its intensity will be reduced. So, this is an input that we take from other supporting scriptures, from which commentators like Vijnana Bhikshu quotes profusely, including Vyasa. So that is an important point, remember. So, Heyam Dukkham Anagatam. Anagatam Dukkham means dukkha which has not yet come. Dukkha here means problems, unpleasantness, etc. This dukkha is a general word. Mostly here, Patanjali is referring to Tapa Dukkha and Samskara Dukkha. That's an important point. So, those unpleasant experiences can be eradicated. So, in this context, we should know Vyasa is projecting a new paradigm. That is, and is taking this from medicine, from Ayurveda. So just as in Ayurveda, we just got 4 sections. Ayurveda has got 4 sections. One is Roga Nidana. Roga means disease. Roga Nidana means the cause for the disease. It could be a change of metabolism. There could be many reasons for it. That second element is called Roga Nidana, or cause of dukkha, in the context of yoga, cause of the disease. And the third factor is getting rid of this problem. Regaining health. That is the third factor. Freedom from disease. And the fourth one is remedy, that is medicine, medical treatment. So what are these 4 factors in Ayurveda? We should remember Roga Nidana, Roga Nivritti, and Roga Nivritti Upaya. That means disease, cause of the disease, freedom from disease, that is getting rid of this disease, and then the remedy, that is medicine. These are 4 factors. So also, according to Vyasa, there are 4 sections in yoga. That is Vyasa's paradigm. What are they? Samsara. Samsara is nothing but the round of painful births and deaths. So, those who are thoughtful and somewhat evolved in life, they can understand. If you think about the meaning of life, suffering and enjoyment, and again suffering and enjoyment. This is an endless cycle of birth, life, death and rebirth. Of course, the law of karma and the doctrine of reincarnation are implied in Yoga Sutra literature throughout. So, at some point, this samsara actually means flow. It's called pravaha in Sanskrit, means flow. This continuing flow. Sometimes it is called a wheel. Both are right. If it is flow, it is straight line progression. If it is wheel, it is cyclic rotation. So, birth, life, death and rebirth. And again this rotates continuously. Or you can say it's like an endless flow. It's called samsara. Now, this samsara, according to Vyasa, is dukkha bahula and samsara heyaha. Dukkha bahula means it is full of pain. Again, pain means a feeling of inadequacy, a feeling of incompleteness, a feeling of imperfection. Not many people may feel that this life is so boring. That's again a matter of evolution. Actually, higher philosophy, higher mysticism, higher music, higher art are all the results of a deep-rooted feeling of the inadequacy of this cyclic, continuous life. It doesn't mean that we hate life, not at all. Yoga Sutra is very positive. It is not negative. It is not a life-negating philosophy. It is sublime philosophy of uplifting of life to a higher level. So that should be understood. So, according to Vyasa, the samsara is dukkha bahula, means it is full of this continuing, endless flow of sufferings and enjoyments. So, if it is continually rotating like a cycle or flowing like a river, we don't know where it is going. There is something wanting in it. But that feeling of incompleteness, again, it need not come to everyone. That's why when we discussed the first sutra of Samadhipada Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Atha means now onwards, henceforth, right now onwards, we are going to discuss yoga. When are we going to discuss yoga? When we feel the inadequacy. I mean, we are just trying to find a higher meaning, a higher meaningfulness, higher relevance to our life and activities. We are not negating the reality of life. Rather, we are trying to enrich our life by finding a new meaning, by finding a new relevance. That happens when you realize this samsara is inadequate, it is incomplete. That is the first factor. It's called Chadurvyuha in Sanskrit language. It's called Chadurvyuha, means 4 sections which constitute yoga. First one is, that is disease. So life itself is a disease according to yoga. Remember, that is a state of experience that should come to a person as a result of his evolution. That should remember. Those who are perfectly happy, well, I have got wonderful things going on. That means they are perfectly happy. They may perhaps come to realize the inadequacy of this maybe after a few more life cycles. This happens. On the physical level, we can easily feel the inadequacy. When we feel a few hairs have gone grey, people get shattered. Naturally, face getting wrinkled. Then also, and when we get advertisements that tell us that this face surgery, plastic surgery can do more damage than good, then people normally go to yoga studios to practice yoga. That is wonderful. At a physical level, it is easy to understand, of course. But at a spiritual level, it's not easy to come to realize the inadequacy of this continuing cycle. To understand it is a roga, it is a disease. The second is, Roga Hetu, it's called. So Vyasa's statement is, Yatha Chikitsa Shastram Chadurvyukam. Just as in Ayurveda, that is Chikitsa Shastram, the science of medicine. Chadurvyuka, 4 sections. Rogo, Roga Hetu, Arogyam, Bhaishijam, Ityevam, Idamabi Shastram, Chadurvyukam eva. Tad yatha samsara, samsara hedu, mokshopaya. So that is Vyasa's statement. It's a very unique paradigm that Vyasa put forward before us. Of course, we should remember this idea is not original to Vyasa. You can find this in the Bhagavad Gita, of course, which is again Vyasa's own creation. In the Upanishads you find, throughout the Vedic literature you find this idea. But Vyasa makes it part of a well-structured, well-defined science. Then it becomes more focused, that's all. So second is Yoga Hetu, Samsara Hetu. That according to yoga system is, Pradhana Purushoya Samyogo Heya Hetuku. That is, Pradhana means Prakriti. According to yoga, we already discussed earlier, we won't repeat now. It's taken from Sankhya philosophy. The entire world is constituted by 23 evolutes of Prakriti. Prakriti is the 24th, from which the other 23 evolutes have come. Mahatattva, Ahankara, then Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, mind, then Panchatanmatras and Panchamahabhutas, the empirical universe, phenomenon world. All these constitute Prakriti. So, we identify ourselves with this unconscious Prakriti, forgetting our true identity, which is Purusha. So, that is the real cause of this samsara according to the system. The cause of samsara is the association of Purusha and Prakriti. And as a result of this association, we have forgotten our Purusha identity. The third one is Hana means the cessation of this association, the eradication. Hana means samyogasya atyantika nivritti. So we get rid of this association, prakriti purusha samyoga. And the method, the remedy is samyak darshanam. That is, by true insight, we get rid of all these problems. I think we will discuss now. You can ask questions. We can just next sutra is next one is Drigdrishayoga samyogo kheya hetu. The cause of this suffering is the association of drashta and drishyam. Drishyam is prakriti and drashta is atman. We'll discuss this in the next class. Now we can have interaction. Most welcome.
Hariom Swamiji.
Yeah.
Swamiji, so when you started the 16th Sutra, you mentioned that there is a change in the kind of discussion that will be happening from the first 15 Sutras and then the 16th Sutra onwards.
Yeah, but please wait, I shall repeat. From 16th Sutra to 26th Sutra, these 4 sections are discussed. That is from 16th to 26th.
Okay.
Yeah, please remember. We had just 16th Sutra is just the beginning. It introduces this Chadurvyuha. Chadurvyuha means a section, a grouping, 4 groupings. So, the samsara, and the cause of the samsara and the method to get rid of it and the actual solution to this problem. Just like medicine in Ayurveda, here also there is a medicine. That all will be discussed in these sutras beginning with 16th to 26th one. So, this 16th sutra is the first of this series, dealing with Chadurvyuha, 4 sections, almost taken from Ayurveda, same thing.
Thank you, Swamiji. I just want to confirm and
No,
get to
that's
know
right.
what exactly.
Yeah. Continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. One after another you find why this world is a samsara, why this is something, is a roga, why it is a disease, and what's the cause of this disease, and how to eradicate the disease by removing the cause, and what's the actual remedy. All these are mentioned here. That's why Vyasa has taken the whole thing from Ayurveda itself. It runs parallel, so you can find. So the whole discussion ends with the 26th sutra, beginning with the 16th one. Okay, thank you.
Swamiji, if I may ask another question.
Yeah.
In ancient Vedic literature, we see a lot of this happening, right? Where you have a certain text and then you have another text which references this text a lot. Like a lot of the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of the statements Krishna makes come from existing Upanishads.
Yeah.
Now you are talking about how Vyasa references the Ayurveda over here.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we? Is it because they're focused on a subject and they have tried to expound that subject, so they just come up with all sorts of proof and all sorts of existing literature to back them up, or what is the reason behind this?
One is the interconnectedness, the interrelatedness of different branches of learning. And another very interesting fact is the author of one book, he may be a master in many other areas of knowledge. See, look at Patanjali. Patanjali has written a book on Charaka Samhita, and according to some scholars, Charaka Samhita himself is the work of Patanjali, not just his commentary, and this man has written the most extensive, the most philosophical, exposition of grammar. Patanjali Mahabhashyam is a book not only grammatical rules, it's the most extensive book on the philosophy of grammar, how language evolves, what are the implications of different uses in grammar. So many of these great saints have written extensively. Shankaracharya, look at him. He has written the most profound philosophical works in Sanskrit and the most profound devotional poetry, and in addition to that the most wonderful methods of worshipping temples, deities in different temples, temple installations, that is his creation, and also he has written a book on this Vyasabhashya Vivarana. Vivarana is the name of the book that Shankaracharya wrote on Patanjali system based on Vyasa's commentary. So you find many of these great saints have written extensively on so many different areas. So there is an interrelatedness, interconnectedness. So that's why you find another interesting point is, if you ask a traditional scholar, they will tell you the truth is one. So naturally, many great sages, when they write about one subject, when they write one book, they may include many other thoughts also. That's what a traditional scholar will tell you. The more so-called modern scholars like us may tell, well, they were familiar with so many areas of learning, so they have put all these ideas in one book. That's how we put it. That's You don't find Kant also giving an exposition of Augustine. You don't find it. Kant writes his own book, that's all. Hegel writes his own book. But even Shankaracharya writes a bhashya on Gita or a commentary on Upanishads. He brings everyone. All the other systems of philosophy are welcomed and he discusses all this. It may be terribly boring for us, but that was the golden era of intellectual culture. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring Kant in the end, because I think that was kind of the seed behind my question. You don't see a lot of Western philosophers doing referencing, right?
Of course, Kant demolishes some of the existing system. Not too many. Of course, Kant, Critique of Pure Reason is a groundbreaking work in Western idealism. Kant is an exception. But if you take Berkeley, if you take Hume, if you take Locke, you don't find it. Hegel, you don't find. They are confined to their own areas. So, but in Indian philosophy, this interrelatedness, you find some of the greatest philosophers were also writing moving poetry, devotional poetry on different deities. You find it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maharaj, I'd like to ask a question about the three gunas and how else they manifest themselves. As Yogesh was mentioning, the gunas is a concept that permeates so much of the ancient literature.
Yeah.
But also, I remember my very first instruction in this pointed out the appearance of the three gunas in the natural world.
Yeah.
In botanical terms almost.
Yeah. Really, these gunas manifest in our emotions and feelings. These three gunas. Extreme ambition, extreme drive, restlessness with activity, restlessness with disciplined activity, with organized activity can be an indication of Rajoguna, but restlessness itself can be an indication of Tamoguna, of course. Again, maturity of wisdom, balanced outlook, the ability to think and act like a grown-up person. That's again a quality of Sattva-guna. So these gunas, they keep coming and going. We may manifest one of these gunas in every kind of our response to experiences coming from outside and within our own system. They influence our thoughts, our actions and feelings. So, and this conflict creates both the experiences of pain and pleasure. And that's what Patanjali means by gunavritti virodha, this mutual conflict. If a person who is fully established in Sattva-guna, he will be free from conflict. But in normal persons, this conflict can happen because Sattva-guna is present, Rajoguna is present, Tamoguna is present. This interplay of these three gunas create different moods. So it can be the change of moods can be due to these three gunas, the interplay of these three gunas. Yeah, we may feel a peace of mind, a tranquility, and after some time we may feel restless, and this mood will change. When we are in a sattvic mood, we may feel a deep sense of tranquility and peace and contentment. But because we are not fully established in Sattva-guna, then what happens? Rajoguna will come and Tamoguna will come. Again, so this comes and goes. This change comes and goes. That's why it's called vritti virodha, means mutual conflict among them. Yeah. Is there anything else? Yeah. Please continue.
Maharaj, one of the other Vedanta Swamis in the Northwest had written a book in fairly recent years about the consequences of these three types of personalities and their impacts on happiness. That our behavioral interactions, both from ourselves but also in understanding where others are coming from or oriented.
Yeah.
That our happiness depended upon our understanding and interactions with them to see where they're coming from. If they're coming from a tamoguna type of orientation or a ragaguna orientation, then perhaps we can understand them better. That there will be a smoother interaction.
This concept is included in the context of parinama dukkha, tapa dukkha and samskara dukkha, which are all dealing with samskaras, previous activities and their residual emotions that get stored up in the karmasya. So as we mentioned, we have this repository of old samskaras which are stored up in the karmasya from various life cycles. So these samskaras, these impressions, these tendencies coming from previous life cycles and previous activities, they belong to three types of gunas: sattva-guna, rajoguna and tamoguna. So they naturally create different kinds of they activate different gunas. Auspicious, meritorious deeds may have left a lot of what you call punya karmasya, means auspicious, good samskaras, and they may induce sattva guna. And again, the way we react, the way we behave, what is only visible outside is like the top layer of a lake, but the causes, the reason why we behave in a particular manner, we can explain that only in the light of previous life cycles and previous karmas. So these karmas, these activities have created this variation in behavior patterns. So a person's behavior, from that we can understand, from his behavior we can understand, at least some can understand his previous life cycles, his previous actions. So Sri Ramakrishna, at a higher level, from a spiritual perspective, he mentions once, if he sees a person, he can see through him. Just like, if we see a glass container, we can very easily see what is kept inside the glass box. Like that, Sri Ramakrishna could see what is actually going on in the mental world of the person he is talking to or he is meeting in front of him. From where does this ability come? You can find in the later sutras, when we deal with Viveka Khyadi, higher enlightenment. When you get that Viveka Khyadi, higher enlightenment, our mind develops certain abilities that penetrate right through the outer layers of our behavior patterns. The entire mental world of the person is revealed to you when you reach that level of spiritual enlightenment. So this is what you have. So it's not one life, one behavior, one action. There is an endless flow of innumerable life cycles behind and innumerable actions behind, which have created this storehouse of different samskaras. And they create variations in sattva-guna, rajo-guna and tamo-guna. That's the idea.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, thank you.
Pranam Maharaj. So, Swami Vivekananda, when summarizing the karma theory, said good brings good, bad brings bad, none escapes this law. And the 16th sutra says we can avoid future dukkha. Doesn't it break that law? And also Jivan Muktas and people who are liberated, they break the law of karma.
Swamiji upheld a theory which is a direct opposite of predeterminism. What Swamiji said, if a person does some good action, that good action will bring good result. If a person does a bad action, the bad action will result bad result. But this very doctrine actually leaves you an option to act differently. And our action depends upon how our mind works. And the way our mind works depends upon the way our samskaras, which are deposited in the mental system, operate. And these samskaras can be refined, can be transformed through conscious effort. So that's what Yoga Sutra is actually trying to do. If a person tries to change his behavior, practicing yama and niyama, these fundamental disciplines, especially yamas, which are universal, then what happens, his mind actually undergoes a transformation. And that mind may suppress a previous tendency, which may be unpleasant. To give an example, suppose a person has got a huge storehouse of violent tendencies, let us say. And if that person happens to read Yoga Sutras or associate with people who have read Yoga Sutras, associate with people with a different nature, higher, better nature, then this association with ideas or human association can bring about a change in the samskaras which are stored up in the system. Because samskaras are not predeterministic factors. That's an important point, remember. Swami Vivekananda his philosophy was just the opposite of predeterminism. Yoga Sutra propounds a philosophy which is the opposite of predeterminism. The kind of predeterminism that sometimes we believe can be found only in the writings of some fringe groups of Protestantism, really speaking, not even mainstream Christianity, where God has ordained everything long back, everything like a machine, like a programmed. The entire operation is programmed to a machine, and our life is like machine. That idea is alien to mainstream Vedanta, Buddhism, or yoga, or anything that Swamiji propounded, remember. Rather, Swamiji was an exponent of the idea that we can build our own destiny. We can rebuild our own destiny. We can change our own destiny. That's the very foundation of yoga. Remember this very well. Because if you interpret Vivekananda's words as some kind of predeterminism, practically you are closing the door for yoga, Vedanta, for everything. It's the opposite of it. Not only that, Swamiji says karma yoga, there is a sentence, are we just tiny boats tossed about in the mighty waves of the ocean of our karma? Is there no hope? There are long sentences you find. Or is there any way for us to build our own destiny? So, we are not tiny boats tossed about by the mighty waves of the ocean of samskaras and karmas from previous life cycles. We can build our own destiny. So, if we are what we are today because of what we did yesterday, then we can build our own tomorrow by undertaking the right activities today. If today is the result of yesterday, then tomorrow is the result of today. That's why yoga theory is it gives a very flexible interpretation of life, not a rigid predeterministic interpretation. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Maharaj, there is a question on YouTube.
Yeah.
By Rohit. The question is, how does one go through tamoguna to rajoguna to sattva guna?
Yeah.
And if there is lost motivation after learning Vedanta?
Nobody should lose motivation after reading Vedanta. Vedanta is not meant to kill your motivation. Vedanta is meant to give us a higher outlook, higher wisdom on what we are doing. So, again, I have to come to the previous subject. If you believe in predeterminism, then there is no scope of motivation. And Vedanta is just the antithesis of predeterminism. That's what Vedanta says. Along with the best that we have in this world, one should also look for the best beyond this world, which doesn't run in conflict with what is best in this world, which reinforces, enriches what we have in this world. So that's the idea of Rajarshi. All these ideas we discussed many times earlier. Unique combination of action with wisdom, motivation with higher insight and wisdom. That's the idea of it. Mere motivation can create its own problems. That's what we are witnessing every day. Every age has witnessed this problem. But motivation coupled with a higher insight and wisdom, that can make our life more complete. We discussed this when we discussed the Rajarshi ideal in the Bhagavad Gita, It's a very interesting concept. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Namaskar, Maharaj.
Namaskar, namaskar.
I would like to ask you how important dispassion is to stopping or ending or making them less, the samskaras are the victories. And what is meant by dispassion?
Yeah. Dispassion is just the opposite of desire and attachment. So if a person can develop dispassion, then especially these papa karmasiyas that we discussed in this particular sutra, we sutra samskara dukkha, we discussed this, tapa dukkha, we discussed this, the tapa dukkha and samskara dukkha can be reduced by practicing dispassion. When we have an ambition in front of us and when we work hard to achieve that because of raga, attachment, and then when there is an obstruction, then we experience dvesha, the opposite of raga. So this interplay between the two, this continuous changing, which creates tapa dukkha, which is present for everyone. You need not be a yogi to have tapa dukkha. Now, if a person develops dispassion, the tapa dukkha can be reduced. And the best way to develop dispassion is to remind ourselves of the limitation of what we are looking for, what we are aspiring, what we are desirous of, the limitation of it. Then even if it's needed, still we won't be attached to it. So developing a sense of the limitation of what we aspire for, that leads to development of dispassion.
Swamiji?
Yeah, most welcome.
Swamiji?
Yeah. Can you
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and ask.
Please.
How to remove old samskars? Is any Vedantic test for this removing the samskars?
How to remove, that's a simple question that's discussed in many places. How to remove old samskaras. We cannot remove samskaras like that, but we can weaken the old samskaras. Suppose we have an unhealthy samskara. Suppose we have an unhealthy, undesirable samskara. This can be applied to the areas of problem like drug addiction, alcoholism and so on. These are all actually examples of obsessive samskaras, difficult to get rid of. Even if you are really convinced of the evils, the negative effects of it, still it's difficult to get rid of. So one way to do that, one way to get rid of is to slowly weaken those samskaras. Unhealthy samskaras cannot be wished away all of a sudden, eradicated. We should remember, samskaras completely, they are completely eradicated only when we attain pratiprasava, counter evolution, that we discussed in the earlier sutras. But before that, in normal life situations, we can weaken the strength of unhealthy samskaras. How do we do it? Developing the opposite samskaras. When we become convinced of the problem of the unpleasant results associated with undesirable samskaras. When we're convinced, this is not good, it will have this problem, it's very problematic. When we remind ourselves of this again and again, then those unhealthy samskaras become weaker and weaker. And slowly, we can make them non-functional. We cannot remove them. At the beginning, those samskaras will be there, but we can reduce the eventuality, we can reduce the opportunity for those samskaras to manifest by denying the appropriate conditions for their manifestation. Then what happens? Those samskaras do not find a means to manifest. Then they become weaker and weaker and become non-functional in course of time. Patanjali doesn't believe samskaras can be eradicated. There is one theory according to some school of commentators. Not Vyasa, but some of the later, Hariharananda, Aranya wrote Bhaswati, a book, and then Mani Prabha, and then King Bhoja's Rajamartha. And some of them believe that a vritti which becomes a samskara cannot be ever removed till Pratiprasava. That's a mainstream theory. But all the commentators agree that negative samskaras can be slowly rendered non-functional. They become less active, they become less harmful by developing counter samskaras called Pratipaksha Bhavanam in the yoga system, which we discuss in the coming sessions. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.
In the biography of Ramana Maharshi, it is mentioned that some of the animals attain this samadhi state. So, does Yoga Sutras mention anything like other than human beings attaining this?
Yoga Sutras do not mention animals getting samadhi and all that. Animals develop certain qualities by associating with holy persons, by living in some sacred places. They do develop, because animals also connect with the environments, and they also imbibe in their own instinct level. They do develop quality. You can easily see this in the dogs, pets. They all display certain characteristics due to human association. So naturally, but samadhi, at least Patanjali never mentions that. None of the commentators either. I have not heard. Maybe some writers have written like that, but I have no idea about it. Yeah. But Ramana Maharshi had a cow with Lakshmi, and Ramana Maharshi used to feed that cow every day, and you can find this in the lives of some great saints. There was a saint, Chattabhi Swamigal, and it is said again. It is mentioned that cobras and frogs and ants used to come. He used to spread some grains of sugar around, and will call ants and insects to come, and they will come from all over the place, and they will eat these sugar grains and go away. So stories are mentioned, but I don't know about the authenticity of those stories. Maybe so. I don't know much about it. We don't make any comments on these subjects which are not scientifically proven or authentically stated. But Patanjali is very scientific. That is one unique quality of this system. So rational and so psychological. There is nothing occult in yoga. That is the beauty and the charm and the grandeur of yoga system. Even the Vibhudipada, if you read, for example, the second chapter, we are going to, after Sadhanapada, we will deal with Vibhudipada, then Samadhipada. That's why we are changing the order. So even the Vibhudis, what we call the results, the powers, some of the higher faculties that you develop as a practice, as a result of practicing yoga, there is nothing occult or supernatural about it. So rational scientific explanation is given. That is the uniqueness of Patanjali's system. Absolutely nothing occult. So scientific, so rational. Even what we normally understand as miracles or these supernatural powers do have their scientific rational explanation in Patanjali's system. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you for all the wonderful questions. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
The recording has stopped.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, namaskar.